We're going to be talking about some subjects today that I think are going to create a thoughtfulness for you. When I say that, it is because so often we have experiences in life that are not going to be happy experiences, experiences that are going to bring into our space traumas, that are going to create questions in our mind, and sometimes we feel so lost, we just don't know what to do. Well, I have a very special guest today, and that is Joan Childs. Now, we are going to be talking about both of her publications, but also not just that, but what she personally has gone through. And you know, I have had the privilege of talking with her on my radio show. For those of you that are regular viewers, you know that I have a daily radio show called the Donna Seebo Show, as well as Warriors for Peace. Well, we were able to extend into doing television programming with some of the authors that I have the privilege of featuring. And the reason I say it's a privilege to feature them is because it's through people's stories, through what they have gone through, the knowledge they've gained. When we're able to share it with each other, that's an empowering thing. And that is what Joan Childs' work professionally, what she does, but also she's going to be sharing those things that she learned, and she's written about it in her two books. One, the very first one we're going to be talking about is Why Did She Jump? And this has to do with suicide. And then two, we're going to be talking about her second book, Do You Hate the One You Love? Oh, are you a little bit curious? I hope so, because I know that our conversation is going to make a difference to you. Joan, I want to welcome you to the show. And, you know, this is my first time of having a chance to meet you in person. Welcome.
To meet you too, Donna. Thank you for inviting me. I appreciate it.
Oh, it's a joy. Joan, give us a little bit of your professional background, because you've been associated with therapy for so long. But tell us about how you became involved with this and why it is something that is so significant to you that you decided to write these two books.
Well, having been a therapist since 1978, that's almost 50 years. Actually, it's 47 years this month that I've been in private practice. And the learnings, and I also know that by helping others, I help myself. So the learning curve is not just from my patients or clients, as we call them. It's also for me. The more I have a sense of purpose and a sense of passion that started many years ago. I'm a mother of 5 children. I lost my daughter, and that's one of the books that I wrote about. And I guess all therapists enter this field because of their own unresolved wounds from childhood. And we want to find ways that we can bring ourselves to a sense of peace, joy, and happiness. And we have to work through uh, um, some of those wounds of early childhood that have not been resolved that we tend to take into our adult life, and they get acted out in there. So, from my own personal struggles as a teenager and as a young adult, and then as a mother, I went into therapy myself for 12 years with a wonderful analyst and psychologist. And it was through that experience that I made a decision that I want to do what you do, I said to him. And he said, well, put your money where your mouth is, go back to school and get your degree. So, with 5 kids, a single mom, divorced, I decided to take my alimony and invested in myself and went back and got my graduate work done here in South Florida at Berry University. And I was 38 years old when I graduated. And so that's when I started. So now I'm 85. So it's been a long journey, but it's been a very happy and wonderful experience because by helping others, as I said, I help myself.
It's so true. You know, Joan, when I first got your material and we had our initial contact, you actually had both books. They've come out pretty much about the same time. And I said, okay, let's talk about the first one. And the first one was about your daughter's suicide. Now, suicide is going to affect people very, very intensely. But it wasn't just about her death. It was about medical health care. It was about so much more. The book has so much information that I think can be of assistance to other people. But let's backstep to what occurred. When did it occur? When did your daughter commit suicide?
Pam was 34 years old. She was a psychologist, a PhD psychologist, working out in California for the John Bradshaw Center. And it might have been, it might, and she was, it might have been something that started way before, by the time she committed. I hate even say committed suicide because my daughter suffered from mental illness. She had been diagnosed with bipolar disorder 1, which is the worst of the two of them. There's bipolar 1 and there's bipolar 2, and they're coming out with bipolar 3 and bipolar 4 now. So her type of bipolar was very difficult to give a what we call a differential diagnosis because it had so much comorbidity with other mental illnesses like schizophrenia, paranoia, affective disorder, oh, so many. So finally, when they came out with the diagnosis, um, the treatment was very difficult because she was not what you would call, she was resistant to a lot of the medications. And there were at least 11 or 12 hospitalizations over a period of 10 years when she had her first break when she was 24 years old. And up until then, she managed to get a PhD. She managed to work at a wonderful mental health center, John Bradshaw Center in Los Angeles. And then she had a break and she lost her position because they were fearful of the fact that she was seeing other patients who were trying to get well also. So then she opened up 2 offices, one in Long Beach, California, and the other one in Santa Monica. And she managed to be very successful there, as well as being very ill at the same time. We lived 3,000 miles away from each other, and when her friends noticed her behavior was um, really something that needed to be attended to, they called me and they said, "You really have to send her back home to Florida, and maybe you can see what's going on and get her the kind of help she needs." She was in treatment out in California. She had many psychiatrists and psychologists, and like I said, she had hospitalizations at least 10 or 11 or 12 times, and she had seen at least that many mental health providers, psychiatrists and psychologists. Actually, she started seeing them when she was in college at the University of Missouri. And so she brought a lot of her issues to clinicians, professionals at an early age. At the time, she was 18 or 19 when she was in college. Her illness manifested, and this is the reason I hate to even use the expression that she committed suicide, and I'll explain why. I think her executioner was her illness, bipolar disorder. Pam never left a note. Pam didn't have any premeditation for this because 2 nights before it happened, I happened to have been in Wisconsin with a friend, and we were going to drive down to North Carolina together to meet my other 2 daughters. My other 2 daughters were younger than her. She was the oldest of the 5 children. And we were babysitting for her because when she returned from California to Florida, she was so ill that she needed to be taken care of by me. And then because she was under a delusionary experience, there was a time that she said, "Mom, I can't stay here with you anymore because I see demons around you and it frightens me." Most of the time she was delusional, but there were times that she was lucid. And when she was lucid, I tried to talk to her as if she was a psychologist and she was hearing what she was saying to me by one of her clients. How would she determine what was going on? What assessments would she make? And she said, "I know that you think that I have mental illness, and I know you think I'm delusional, but I'm not, Mom. I'm really okay. I have seen the other side. I didn't even know what she was talking about. But to make a long story short, when I was in Wisconsin, I called her. I didn't feel comfortable being away from her. And she was with her father, who was a doctor, but he knew really nothing about psychiatry. He was a family physician, and his knowledge about psychological issues and mental illness was less than nothing. And she was staying there, and he had a live-in girlfriend who had just broken her leg, her whole leg, so she was in a cast all the way up to her thigh, and she was unable to walk. And they were. This was on a Tuesday when I was in Wisconsin. I called her because I was concerned the fact that I was away, and her two sisters, who she lived with after she decided to leave me, we were really her support system, and we were all going to North Carolina for a break because we were so exhausted from trying to keep up with her illness and keep up with the support that she so badly needed. So I called her from that Pearson's house that I was at that night, and she was in Florida, and I said, Pam, how are you doing? And she said, you know, it's tough, one day at a time, Mom. I remember almost every word she said. And I said, I have to ask you a question. It's not easy for me. It's very difficult, but I have to do it because I'm away and I'm concerned. And she was under the care of a psychiatrist at the time in Florida, in Miami. So I said, this is hard, but do you have any suicidal ideation? Have you ever thought about killing yourself? I need to know that you're okay. It was probably the most difficult question I ever had to ask her. I don't have that trouble asking my clients that question because we're not emotionally attached. But this is my daughter. She was 34 years old, beautiful, brilliant, sweet, kind, loving, caring. And she was saving the souls of so many of her own patients. And yet she was falling through the cracks, not getting the help that she needed. And I was worried as a mother. And so when I asked her the question, she said, Mom, let me reassure you. There is no way I would ever leave a legacy like that to my father, to you, to my siblings. It's just never going to happen. This was Tuesday night. And that's number one. And number two is if I was going to kill myself, I would be giving my soul to the devil, which was one of her belief systems, that the devil was going to take her soul. She says, if I kill myself, it's like giving it to him. And thirdly, I'm Jewish, and we're not allowed to commit suicide. And she was a practicing, observing Jew. She would go to the synagogue and pray, and she would celebrate the holidays and the Sabbath. So she was very involved in her Judaism. And when she told me these three reasons why that would never happen, there was a part of me, that very intuitive, maybe mother part, that just didn't trust her answers. So I called her psychiatrist in Florida, who she was seeing, and she had been seeing her with me. I've been in many of her sessions with her. And I said, Carol, I'm worried about my daughter. She's away. I'm away. Her sisters are away. Would you do me a favor? And please, when you see her Thursday on your appointment, now it's Tuesday night, they had an appointment on Thursday, just a day and a half later. Would you please hospitalize her because we are away, her support system. Her father really doesn't know enough about what's going on, and I'm frightened. And she said, well, she won't qualify for inpatient care because she's got an HMO, which is the biggest tragedy that we ever had, because it didn't cover what she needed, which was inpatient care. I said, well, look, I'll pay for it myself, so will her father, but we just want her to be safe. So she put her in, and of course, 4 days later, they wanted to get her out. I managed to go over to the hospital and ask them to please keep her for a little longer. So they kept her for another 3 days. But anyway, she never really made it. I'm kind of putting two stories together. After I spoke to Carol, Carol said she would see her on Thursday, and she would make an assessment to see if she was suicidal. She said, I know she's paranoid, but I know that, she's got some delusional system going on, but I don't think she's suicidal. I said, well, I need I need to be able to have some peace. Please just put her in the hospital. This was another, I got it mixed up with another story. It was because she had so many hospitalizations. Anyway, she never made it to Carol's office on Thursday at 11 o'clock in the morning. She jumped out, leaped out of her father's 15-story window onto the concrete pool area. And she was supposed to meet her sister-in-law, who was going to have lunch with her, and they were going to go to the beach, and she was going to go to the appointment with her psychiatrist. None of that ever happened. She leaped out of the window to her death. And I was in North Carolina. I had just arrived. I was maybe there for 10 minutes when I got on the phone. There was a big sign out of the rental office that said, "You have an emergency. Call Dr. Glassman or your secretary, Marlene." So I was very anxious when I got that. I saw that because my other daughter was, two daughters were up there also in North Carolina, and one was driving my car from Florida. So I didn't know what could have happened. Did she get in an accident? Was Pammy okay? Anyway, I called, and I said to my ex-husband, "Don't tell me any bad news." He said, "I'm going to tell you the worst possible thing you'll ever hear. Your daughter killed herself this morning." Well, I went into shock. I was in the telephone booth. It was an old fashioned. We didn't have cell phones at the time. It was in 1998, and it was one of these old fashioned country red telephone booths. And I felt like a sword had entered my stomach and had gone up through my neck and my head. It was a very strong physical feeling of pain, and I was with this friend that I had been driving from Wisconsin, and I collapsed in his arms, and he took me to the hospital. And the doctor, of course, saw that I was in shock. In Judaism, we have to bury the dead the following day. So I had to get on a plane the next morning very early to go to my daughter's funeral. So I said to the doctor, he wanted to give me a sedative. And I said, I won't be able to take it because I've got to get up at 6 in the morning to get on a flight at 7 to make it to my daughter's funeral. It was a nightmare. It's every parent's worst nightmare. Losing a child is every parent's worst nightmare, but losing a child through suicide when you're not there, and when you feel like, what did I do wrong, or what should I have done that I didn't do, what was missing, the stream of all of these feelings, these emotions. It was a cascade of emotions that went through me, and I kept seeing the video of her jumping out of the window 15 stories to the cement ground, because it was by the pool area, and I wouldn't stop. So it was a nightmare, and it's every parent's worst nightmare.
Mm-hmm.
So what happened with her was, after that, it was just the grief, the cascade of emotions that come down like a waterfall, and you go into a different state of disbelief, denial, and then you have to go through the pain of anger and the depression. It's 5 different stages of grief that you go through until you finally get to acceptance, which takes a while. It's a process. It's not an event, I can assure you. And grievers are nocturnal. We don't sleep. So I had this impulse, I was somehow driven to the computer by a force inside me, maybe a muse, something, because I couldn't sleep. Anyway, I was compelled to go to the computer and start writing my feelings. And I didn't stop. I just wrote and wrote and wrote. 7 years of writing. And
Mm-hmm. Now, with
when
that,
I got finished, I
Joan,
said, you know what, this may be helpful to other parents who have gone through what I went through.
yes,
That pretty much summarizes what happened. And the book deals with my grief, her loss and grief, and her siblings, because I had 4 other siblings. It was really a family issue. It wasn't just mine. Her father was devastated. Until this day, 25 years later, I don't think he's ever come out of the grief. And I moved on. I had 4 other children that I had to care for, and that I had to be present to. I had a full practice of clients that needed me, but at the same time, I did go for help. I went to a grief counselor And I became a grief counselor from this. But then I went to a group, which was at the hospital, of survivors of children who had committed suicide. And I went for 4 or 5 times, and there were people there, Donna, that had been there for 20 years grieving the loss of their kid. And I made a decision. I made a cognitive, conscious decision that wasn't going to be me. I wasn't going to be a survivor, and I wasn't going to be a victim. I was going to come out of this stronger than when I went into it. And I made that a mission. By helping others, I helped myself. So the grief and loss took a long, long time. Pamela was still today remembered by her clients. I still get letters today. And the loss was just incredible, as it would be for any parent. But I don't think she committed suicide. I think it was her executioner was her bipolar disorder.
This is something, as a counselor, that you have been able, through your writing especially, been able to share, as you've just done, a great deal of what one goes through when they have something like this happen. But you also have written another book that had to do with relationships. And I wanted to be sure that both of them were covered because they both came out at the same time, almost. And it's as if you really, just from the statement you've made, that you wanted to make sure that you had information to people that, number one, there's always hope and there's always healing in different modalities of experiences. Now, your second book is Do You Hate the One You Love? And I remember when I saw that title, I thought, do you hate the one you love? Now, that is a most curious statement, but yet that is a very true statement. You've had clients that you've asked, do you, when they're sitting in front of you, they're contemplating divorce, they're looking at situations that are just in their minds unbearable. They don't communicate with each other. Some of them have been married a short time. Some of them have been married a long time. There's all kinds of circumstances around people and their relationships. But with this, when you ask that question, you really were stimulated by someone else that you heard asking a question like that. Do you hate the one that you love? And by golly, this book presents sides of thought and perception that I don't think a lot of people give much attention to. So it creates a thinking process. And it is something to really read this. Now, one of the first things, and it makes me laugh when I'm thinking about it, one of the first chapters in your book is, Can a Man Be More Like a Woman? And it's a takeoff on the song, Why Is Out of My Fair Lady? Why can't a woman be more like a man? Just this type of thing. And you just reversed it. And, I loved it. But I have heard men say, how come, just like in My Fair Lady, why can't women be more like us? I mean, we're so logical. We do this, we do that, we do the other. And then you have this that's a reversal. And women will say, why can't they be more like us? And it's really a fascinating read. And when you started putting this book together, because you wrote the first one about your daughter and the experience of her suicide, and then you have this one, this is something that, do you find when people read this book, they'll go, you were talking about me. What kind of a response have you gotten from this?
Well, many, many. Let me just go back a little bit and tell you how this book was born. Having been a couples counselor for so many years, as well as individual counseling, I heard from women, not from men. I heard from women, whether they were with their life partner or their husbands or boyfriends, I would hear when they were together or individually, I hate him. I can't stand him. He is such an idiot. He's an asshole. He's a jerk. He's not ever present. He doesn't listen. He's never conscious. He's not even aware what's going on. He's clueless most of the time. And I hate him. I just can't stand him. And I heard it over and over from different women over the years. And one day, a woman came in and she said the same thing I just said. And I said, so why are you with someone that you hate? And she said, she looked at me very puzzled. And she said, well, I love him. I love him when he's acting normal and not like a jerk. And we have fun together. But when he's acting like a jerk and he's clueless, I can't stand him. So I said, then you hate the one you love. And she said, yes, that's exactly right. Sometimes I hate him and sometimes I love him. And I started to get into that word hate. And of course, over the last few years, that word hate has become a very nasty word. And I didn't want people to think of it as being something that has been brought up in our culture very recently in the last few years about all the homophobias and Islamophobia and the anti-Semitism that has been going on worldwide, not just here in this country. Mm-hmm. So I decided to dedicate, I think, either a chapter or an introduction to be able to define and clarify what I meant by the word hate, because it's in our vernacular. We use the word every day. You know, I hate driving in this traffic. I hate being on an airplane when it's turbulent. I hate the stock market when it's volatile. I hate peanut butter or whatever. Hate is very common. And sometimes we can actually hate our kids. Not that we hate them, but we hate the behavior. It isn't that we hate our spouses. We hate some of the behaviors. But the most interesting thing is it's not a male bashing book. And it goes back to your question, why can't a man be more like a woman and why can't a woman be more like a man? Because they can't. They are not structured to be that way. They have different hormones, they have different organs, mm-hmm. They have different mindsets to be different. And I think John Gay wrote about men are from Mars, women are from Venus, and it's not going to ever change. But what I was trying to do was really to reconnect people over time that have lost that connection that they once had when they first got together under the altar, and they looked into each other's eyes and made commitments, said their vows, and they wanted their intention was to live happily ever after. And then all of a sudden, over the years, the space that they live in, the relational space, because the relationship does not live in each other. It lives in the space between. And over the years, that relational space, which is supposed to be sacred space, gets polluted because of the different backgrounds that each person brings in from their own learnings of modeling behaviors from their mother and father or from their culture or from their religious beliefs. And all of a sudden it gets dumped into that relational space. And then it becomes uncomfortable. Mm-hmm. And so they react to the discomfort in the space. And then if it's not cleaned up, which most of the time it's not, because people don't know how to clean it up. They need to be taught. It's a learned behavior. Then it becomes dangerous. And then they react to the danger in the space that they both co-created unconsciously, unwittingly, unknowingly. So it's my job as a therapist, as a couples therapist, to help them clean up that space and to make it sacred once more. So, because that's where the kids live. They live in the relational space. The dogs and the cats too. They can crawl when it gets rough, they can crawl under the couch or under the bed. But the kids don't know how to handle it, and they feel the tension between the parents. So it's vital, it's essential that people who are in relationships that have lost that connection, and that really 50% in this country are getting divorced, they have to learn how to make the space clean, how to get rid of the pollution, because if they keep sweeping it under the carpet, their carpet is going to look like the Swiss Alps, and they'll get divorced, or they'll live lives of quiet desperation. So my job was really to show them how to do it. And in the book, I think chapter 6 and 7, the reader could be a fly on the wall and actually see me doing the work with a couple, which is very different than just having two people coming to my office, listening to her, listening to him, listening to her, like a tennis match. It's not like that. It's not a lot of words. It's an economy of words. And I have them cross the bridge to their partner's neighborhood, which is much different than their neighborhood. So one person is a host and invites their partner over to the neighborhood on an imaginary bridge. It's called a brain bridge because the brain is the only organ in the body, in our bodies, that cannot self regulate. It needs another brain. So when I have them cross the bridge from their neighborhood and leave everything that they think they know, all of their conceptions, all of their beliefs, all the things that they've learned, everything that they know, they have to leave it in their neighborhood. And they have to cross the bridge only with a plastic bag and a passport because I am the customs agent and I make sure that they come over with nothing of their own. And they go over and they cross the bridge to their partner's neighborhood, and then that person is a visitor. I mean, she's visiting or he's visiting, and the person that they go to is the host or the hostess, and that host says, "I'd like to invite you over to my neighborhood down a street called whatever they want. It could be fear, it could be loneliness, it could be um, dependence, anything at all that they want to call it." And then when they come over, they start having what we call the encounter. And I am monitoring them. They have to have, they're 18 inches apart. They're holding their hands within each other with a little space between, but they have to look into each other's eyes, just as they did under the altar. All the time, I keep going with my hand back and forth, back and forth. Keep your eyes on their eyes so that you can see that their inner child, there's a little boy in him and there's a little girl in her. And if they connected to the eyes, because they are the windows of the soul. And so I keep them monitoring back and forth, keep looking. They cannot take their eyes off of each other. And you'd be surprised when they first start and I have them hold their hands and I just say, just look into the eyes of, look who came here today. Look who showed up for you. Look into her eyes. Look into his eyes. And I let them look and just be close without a word. You'd be surprised on it. Tears come
Oh,
because
I'm
it's
not
the
surprised.
they felt connected in years. And I work from that point. And once they learn how to clean up the space, they get reconnected and the love jumps right back up again. And now they know it, now they know how to do it because it's going to happen all through their lives. People are going to have to change. You have to learn how to agree to disagree. There's going to be different ways of looking at the same stimuli. Three people see an accident, they're going to report it differently because we each have our own perceptive mode, and they don't know that they think they're right and the other person's wrong. So this is a way of cleaning up that relational space, and that's pretty much what happened and how it came out. And it came out, both books came out 5 days apart from each other.
Mm-hmm.
So it was really a very exciting. And I won on the I hate the man. Do you hate the one you love? I won the Bronze Award for the best nonfiction book, and I was nominated for the best memoir for the Why Did She Jump book. By the way, there's subtitles that are kind of interesting. And Why Did She Jump? The subtitle is My Daughter's Battle with Mental Illness, a Broken Healthcare System, and My Ultimate Search for Peace, which really kind of identifies what's inside the book. In Do You Hate the One You Love? The subtitle is Strategies for Healing and Saving Your Relationship. That's kind of like an overview of Do You Hate the One You Love? It's not a male bashing book at all. Men can actually learn from it. And those that show up at the counseling session, They have to both give me a big fat yes, because if they don't, they do not qualify as a candidate to do the work. I have to
Hmm.
know that both of them want to get better. They want their relationship to become more connected to each other, and they want to work through these issues to have a better life, to be happier, and to have the joy they once had. So they have to give me a big fat yes. If one person says, "Well, I don't know, I'm not sure, there's so much damage that's been done," then they don't really, they're not really candidates for the work that I do. So
Hmm.
I'm very selective on who I see because I want a good outcome.
Well,
So
I understand that. Any counselor, I know, being one myself, you want that, you want a good outcome for people. One of the factors in your book, Do You Hate the One You Love? You bring up something that I keep hearing from a number of people, men and women both, and that is in our environment today, technology has really created a massive shift of no communication. We see families sitting at a table in a restaurant. I've seen this so many times, where they're all on their phones. They're not even looking at the food that they've ordered, or if they do, it's just like, where do I take a bite? You know, what am I going to eat? Just this moment, and then they're right on their phones. I've seen it with parents with their kids. When the kids are engaged in a sport activity, they're there, phones are on, the parents are on the phone. We
yeah,
have this disassociation that has occurred, and you address that. And then also, one of the things that is also mentioned in this same book is the relationship of drugs and alcohol. We have a major epidemic at this time. I call it an epidemic because to me it's really serious. We have people that have been on medications that are very, very, very much, after they finish their medications, they have addictions of their own that they can work through. There's help for that. But
yes,
people seem to be so isolated, and it's really become more intensified since COVID. And
yes.
I don't know what it's going to take. What are your thoughts about this? You express some of them in your book.
Yeah. Well, thank you for bringing it up because it really is it is an epidemic. Everything you've spoken about, technology and all of the addictions that we are trying to work with. I will not see a couple if they are they are alcoholic or drug, if they're using alcohol or drugs as a way of self-medicating because I'm not seeing the authenticity of the individual. I am seeing the addict, and beneath the addict is the authenticity. So they're, and only way that I will see them is if they have to get clean and sober for at least 3 months before I will take them on as a client because it's a waste of time, it's a waste of money, and you're not speaking to the person. So it's a big issue, and I tell them that they have to get clean and sober because they will never really know their partner or themselves until they are clean and sober. Otherwise, they're just really self-medicating. And the reason that they're self-medicating is because most people who are using, whether it's drugs or whether it's alcohol or any kind of an addiction, they come from families where they never had a secure attachment. And they bring this unfulfilled or unresolved conflict from their childhood, the wounds that incurred when they were little, when they were impressionable, when they were very vulnerable. And they don't know it. They don't have any clue that they bring that into their relationships. And they choose a partner unconsciously that will give them the biggest nightmare that they ever had. But that's the choice is to really help them resolve those conflicts that they didn't get resolved in their when they never had a secure attachment. So they end up hiring these people to help them unconsciously, and then they end up firing them for the very reason that they hired them. So they have to go back in time. You can't really treat them in the present. And I want to thank you for bringing up the technology too, because that goes with this. That's also an addiction. Kids especially are addicted to, they're always on, they can be walking together and standing by the bus to wait for the school, and they're not talking to each other, they're texting to each other. And parents and couples, they go to, instead of going to bed at night holding each other, they're holding their laptops. So it's become robotic, and it's really really very, very damaging, extremely damaging, not only to the relationship, but to the brain. We become robotic in our behavior, and we don't look into each other's eyes. We don't really connect. And connection is the most important thing in our lives. We need people. And they did a Harvard study for over 80 years, finding, what makes people happy. And as a matter of fact, Robert Waldinger, it's on the TED Talk, and I recommend anybody to watch it if you want to know what really makes you happy. It isn't exactly being famous or making a lot of money. It's relationships. It's connection. And we've lost that with technology. It's awful. I don't know if we're going to get it back, but I'm so glad I didn't have children now. I had them back in the 60s and the 70s prior to all the technology that came in, which is interfering with the quality of our lives. So you mentioned two very important things that are really damaging to the spirit of the human being, damaging to the relationships and to each other, undermining so much of what we had as my memories of my childhood. I feel like I was on another planet because I can't even relate to what's going on now, and it's very scary. And I just, I just don't know what the answer is. But I just had a conversation before I was on the show with you with the gentleman who was making my audio books out of these books. And he said to me, "Can we text?" And I said, "No, I'm old fashioned. I want to talk to you." And the way, on a telephone, and we'd be making Alexander Graham Bell very happy too. But mainly, I cannot text. And I refused to text because he wanted me to choose the kind of a person that would be reading the books. And I said, I can't do that on a text. So we have to talk on the telephone. Now, he's a generation younger than me. He must be about 40 years old. I'm 85. So his frame of reference to communication is texting. I can't even move my thumbs back and forth on the telephone as fast as these kids can do it. And to say and it's the most brilliant way to misunderstand and really each other and make misconceptions of what we're saying. So it's a real issue. There's no question about it. I'm so glad you brought it up. I don't know what the future is going to be because AI now has taken over so much, and we don't know what's real and what's fake. It's really scary. I think it's like, what was his name, Alex Huxley, A Brave New World. I think we really got beyond that now. So I'm hoping that people will really come back to being connected and really needing each other in order to have the kind of happiness and joy that's missing in so many relationships, not just, marriages and romance, but parents with children and children with children and brothers and sisters, and not having the dinner. I mean, we never had these phones when we had dinner. We weren't allowed to watch television. We had to be present for each other, and it worked. I don't know why it got, I guess it got changed because the world moves on, and we're in the world of AI, we're in the world of technology. And just when I learned something, on Zoom, they changed that. I have to relearn it. It's moving so fast, faster than our brains can really take it in, the information. So I'm so glad you brought that up.
Well, I feel that much of what you have said is so real. And I think there is a challenge for all of us, Joan, to actually make time for people. No
Yes.
phones, and even put that specification out. But I notice when I'm around people so often, they don't want to look eye to eye. And it's a sad thing because that establishes trust. And in business, in your personal relationships with people, trust is so very, very important. And that is something that I think is missing even in the medical environment. And
Yes.
this is one of the biggest complaints that patients have with physicians. And I just interviewed a doctor who, fortunately, at a younger age, was introduced to a therapist who was able to work with someone that was having major problems. They had made major problems. They had gone to multiple therapists, and they were having certain physical conditions. And he spent time with this therapist, and he said, "Can you take this patient? Because as a doctor, we just can't help." And he found out that the patient got well within just a very short period of time. And it had to do with the emotions, it had to do with the heart, it had to do with the spiritual need of that person. And he said, "I want to know what you did that made it work." And so she started teaching him what she had come to know and working with people as a therapist. And he said, "Okay, I want to be a better doctor. Let me see how this is going to work." And the patients that have come to him, and he's in Oregon, I think he's the first doctor I have ever interviewed, and I've interviewed some very, very fine physicians and professional people, but he worked with his patients from then on, acquired one habit, and you mention it in your book, one habit, and that was learning to listen, to be able to be quiet, to listen to what someone had to share, what someone wanted to express. And I thought to myself, it is so simple, but it is a discipline, isn't it? And I know we have just a little bit of time here left, but listening is critical. This is something that if we don't really listen, shut up and listen to someone else, how are we really even going to know who they are? Sometimes people will let things slip in that conversation. Just a tiny little sentence or a voice, an expression in the voice. And you go, we've found something here. What is really at the core of this, that, or the other? And I know I'm making it sound simplistic, and it's not necessarily simplistic at all. But it really does make a difference, doesn't it?
Absolutely. And I'm glad you pointed that out because, and my son is a doctor and he's seeing 25 to 30 patients a day, which is ridiculous.
Oh, that's
I mean,
awful.
how can you give any time to someone when you only have 15 minutes? How can you really know what's going on? And then you're not even looking at the patient, you're looking at the computer while the patient is sitting and waiting to. It's a terrible thing, but it's a different world with medicine today. It's owned by businesses. All the hospitals and the private practices have been bought up by business, and they are dictating how they want to make the money. And so they see patients for 15 minutes, and they're not even looking at them. And so it's such an amiss, and it's a tragedy basically going on. And it's important that what you're saying, and I see it every day. I have a practice. I've always been in an office. When COVID came, I waited about 9 months and I finally gave up my office because I wasn't able to go there. It was a medical office, medical building. So I made my office in my home. I made the garage into an office. And then what happened is we had ended up with what do they call it, Zoom and telehealth, which is really, it was a way of at least connecting or seeing the patient because people couldn't come to each other's homes or each other's offices. So they had, what do they say? Necessity is the mother of invention. So we came up called Zoom, and we were able to see patients on Zoom. Today, now that COVID it's still out there, but it isn't what it was in 2020, where people were dying and people were on respirators. I had COVID just 2 weeks ago, and I got over it in 6 days. So it's better now than it was then. I think we built up some immunity at this point. But when a patient calls me and says, "Oh, do you want me to come to your office, or do you want to do this on Zoom?" I live in, they live in maybe 30 miles away or 20 miles away. I say, "Well, you can do what you want. I can see you on Zoom. But for me, if I'm looking at you on Zoom, I can't see if your foot is shaking. If I'm seeing you in person and I'm looking at your foot and it's shaking, I can say to you, if your foot could talk, what would it say? But I can't see that on Zoom. So I have a preference. If it's up to me, I like the client to come in to my office and be with me so I can do the eyeball to eyeball and not have a screen in between us. That's my preference. I would say it's better than nothing that we had, but now people are lazy. They don't want to drive. They don't want to be in the traffic. So they'd much rather stay in their home in pajamas, and I can stay in my pajamas, and we can do it on a television screen, just like we're doing this show right now. But
Yes.
to get to me, to see somebody in person is much more effective than on a television screen. So I always say, well, this is my preference, but it's up to you. If you want to take the drive, I've got somebody coming today that lives about 25 miles from me, and she asked me this morning, "Can I come and see you, or do you want me? Is it better on Zoom? Can I stay? Can I do it on Zoom?" I said, if I had my choice, I would like you to come to me. I know it's a big drive, and I know it's traffic, and I don't want to cause you more stress than you already have, but that would be my preference. However, I'll leave it up to you. I can do it on Zoom, but you lose the essence of connection when you're on Zoom. And like I said, I can't see their foot. You can't see my foot right now. You see, from my neck up, from my chest up. So, you don't see the body language, which sometimes speaks louder than words.
Oh,
And
that is
I,
so true. That is
is it,
so true. My
yeah,
goodness. That's why when you have an opportunity to meet somebody in person, where you sit down with them and you maybe have a cup of coffee or tea and have a little bit of a snack, whether it's in your own home or it's in a restaurant, you're able to determine a lot more than
right.
you would just like you said. But it's a wonderful tool and it serves a purpose. I mean, you're over 3,000 miles away from me, so you can't be here and then end up going home. So I'm very grateful for this because, it's something, sometimes people are able to be in studio with me, but other times, if they're in India or Greece or what have you, until we get the supersonic plane that can get us here in 3.5 minutes or a half an hour, then we're going to be very fortunate to be able to use the technology that we have today. I'm so appreciative of your being with me, Joan.
Well,
It has
I'm
been such a pleasure having you as a guest. And I think both of your books are very, very significant because it addresses issues and things that people are in different situations. The one subject matter of suicide, which has a very, very deep effect on people. And sometimes it's even difficult for someone to talk to anyone about it. And with your openness, that gives an insight into an understanding that there is a way to not have what I call complete closure, the way someone might like, but understanding that sometimes there's things that go on with people that with medication or whatever condition they may have that will influence them. And because we're not there with them, we had no way of affecting a different change. And I think
right.
that that is something that's so important for us to be alert to. And then, why do you hate the one you love? Oh my goodness. I mean, that is something, there's so much humor in it as well, but also some real, true reality of people not understanding how to communicate with each other.
Right.
And I remember I was married for 42 years before my husband passed away. And in being married to him, it took a while to find out about the background. And for me, what was really the eye opener was actually letters that I happened to find from his ex wife. And that gave me a whole different insight. Now, that sounds a little bit strange to discuss, perhaps publicly, but sometimes we have to be open to learning about people's backgrounds. What are their cultures? What is it that's going on there? What affects them? Why? So I'm
Yeah.
so grateful. I think both of your books are just very good. Why Did She Jump? And then Why Do You Hate the One That You Love? Or do you hate the one you love? I got to use the words correctly. But it is really a pleasure having you as a guest, and I want to thank you for being with me. For those of you that are watching the program, I think it's so important for us to understand we never stop learning and we never stop growing. When I started my radio programming over 24 years ago, little did I realize that I was going to be encountering people from around the world. And here we are today with the benefits of technology. We are definitely able to meet with people in all parts of the world who have taken the time to take another step forward, and that is to write about their experiences. You know, when you pick up a book, it's a friend. It's a friend that you need to know that you can write to, you can talk to, you can share with other people, have conversations with them. What do you think about these thoughts or this person's experience? There is so much value in a book. And you know what? It'll always be there as a friend whenever you need to have that referral. Now be sure you check out my website, DelphiInternational.com. I want you to know at the end of this program, you will have the information that enables you to be in touch with Joan and any of the other programmings that I've done. All of that contact information is always available to you. It has been a pleasure to share this hour with you, and you know what? You're going to be able to hear the audio of this also on my radio show as well. So don't forget to check out the Donna Seebo Network. Remember, you are a very powerful individual, no matter who you are. I don't care your gender. I don't care what part of this planet you come from. But you've been given the gift of life. And in being given the gift of life, you have a special purpose here. And I hope that this programming has inspired you to realize we always have options. And my guests frequently provide those at the back of the books that they write. I look forward to meeting with you again and to sharing these wonderful guests that I have. And won't you realize that life is wonderful? Don't ever think that you cannot have an even richer one than you could ever have imagined. Bye for now.